Weber. Heyo.
Hello.
How are you? Okay.
Yeah. I'm ready.
Okay, you say that. Are you really? Julie, thank you so much for taking the time to hang with us tonight. What do you know about Ethan Crumbley? And you wrote a book about Columbine. Do you see any similarities between Ethan with Dylan and Eric?
Actually, no. I mean, there's some surface similarities, but the real similarities that I see are actually between Ethan Crumbley and Kip Kinkle, who shot up Thurston High School in Oregon in 1998. So, roughly 1 year before Columbine happened. And Kinkle, the specific circumstances of his case was that he had been hearing voices much like Ethan. And he had, possibly some, schizophrenia, something like that. Nobody diagnosed it. His parents had tried to get him help, but he did end up shooting them and then going to the school anyway. And since then, there's an interesting article in the New Yorker because he had a sibling who was 11 years older than him, and she was at some university in Hawaii when it happened. And she sort of has maintained her anonymity for obvious reasons, right? Over the last few years. And she actually approached a New Yorker reporter last year and I'm wondering if that was because of this case that she's seeing going on in Michigan, and wanted to talk about how she is in contact with her brother weekly. He's in a psychiatric facility. I think he's in a psychiatric facility. He actually really did get screened and tested and assessed right after, because he was suicidal too. And so that's the one that it reminds me of the most, because Ethan had been asking his parents for help too, and they had been saying, I think they weren't equipped to know what they were supposed to do. That's the sense that I get. And I read in some article that she had insurance, the mother had insurance. She worked for a real estate company, so they don't always give comprehensive insurance at these realtors and these kinds of things. So, and his dad was doing DoorDash, and so they may not have had insurance or known how they could get insurance for their child. And so I think they kept putting it off because they didn't know how much it was going to cost. They were having money troubles. They were fighting about money all the time. So one could say he got neglected, but he got neglected because his parents really didn't have the resources that they needed in that community, or help that they needed to be able to do that. You know what I mean? To get him help. And in the case of Kinkle, you can say, even if he had gotten the resources, he could have done it anyway. Right? Because Kinkle did get the help. The case of Dylan and Eric, I think, they were denying. I mean, they weren't telling people that they needed help. They weren't asking for help. They were out doing what they were doing, and being out with friends. And I think their parents really had no clue what they were planning. So they weren't like loners. These two were loners, Crumbley and Kinkle. And Crumbley's only friend got sent away to treatment a month before the shooting.
Really?
Yeah, and he'd been talking to him and saying, I keep hearing these voices and I really need to get help. He said he hadn't slept more than 17 hours in 5 days. The voices were keeping him awake, and his dad just kept telling him to write everything down in a journal. And so it's more complicated, I think, than the media has made it seem in this case. And I almost, I've said this before. I said this the last time I was on, that I often feel like it's my sense going through all of this awful stuff that when the shooters shoot their parents before they go do it, it's kind of a thing that they're doing to absolve them of having to face the public after it's over. like it's a
Mm.
mercy thing, right? Um, and Ethan didn't do that, but you know, to me it seems like they don't know how to fix themselves, a lot of them. And I think that Ethan definitely had this problem. So that I see similarities between him and Kip Kinkle more than um, Dylan and Eric, who were actually trying to, you know, they had bombs and stuff. This kid just kind of walked out of the bathroom, you know, with a gun that his dad had bought 3 days before. It didn't seem like there was much planning.
No, it didn't seem like there was much planning from the little bit that I understand about it. And, you know, it also sounds like from the way you're describing it that his parents, you know, through having financial difficulty,
Yeah.
um, which again, why this case to me is such a big deal.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't have the ability to have health insurance to take their kid to a mental health professional to get it looked at. And I'll add, there's a fair amount of parents that don't want to believe
Hmm.
that their child has
Hmm.
a mental defect to that point. You know, for me, the big issue here is as a parent, you're a parent. There's hopefully, you know, tons of parents watching the show.
Hmm.
No one thinks their kid is a school shooter.
Right.
It's like no one thinks their kid's suicidal. It's always a
Right.
shock.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird thing too, though, because one of the lines that I read, which was interesting. There's a New York Magazine article that was really well researched on this. I recommend it. I can't remember the author's name, but she you know, she actually looked up, you know, past legislation in Michigan. I almost thought maybe she might have been from Michigan. Um, I'm from Michigan. Like, I mean, I grew up in Clarkston, where the mother of Ethan Crumbly grew up.
Oh wow! Did you know you
She
guys didn't know each other?
No, she's probably, yeah, she's younger than me. She's probably 5 or 6 years younger than me.
Hmm.
Um, and she skied at Pine Knob. You know, I had my first kiss at Pine Knob. You know, these kinds of things, and I didn't know Oxford. I mean, I didn't live in Oxford. I knew Oxford, but Oxford's a little more rural. That's true, but um, I can see why. You know, I've been saying this all day. I think that the reason why they had to go to jail is because nothing can definitely be done about guns.